Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is well. We're just going to allow a few minutes for last-minute participants to join. But while we wait, on the screen, you will see that there is a way to access language services. So at the bottom of your screen, you will notice that there is a globe. If you click on the globe, you will then select a language and then mute original audio. You have to make sure that you do select the language. Buenas tardes, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros hoy. Aquí tenemos para tener acceso a los servicios de la interpretación. Por favor, van a ver el icono abajo en su pantalla. Van a hacerle clic y van a elegir su idioma. Y entonces vas a silenciar el idioma o lenguaje original. Muchas gracias.
Are we good to move forward, Jovi, or do you want to say it one more time?
I'm sorry, I was in the Spanish channel and I had to move to the English channel. Yes, I'll say it one more time. It is in the chat as well. I've posted the directions in the chat. So at the bottom of your screen, you will notice that there is a globe. If you click on the globe, you will have the option to select a language. Please select the language and mute the original audio. Abajo van a ver un icono de un globo. Por favor, hazle clic y elija su idioma. Y entonces silencie el audio original. Muchas gracias. All set.
All right, thank you. All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to session 3 of our series for restraint and seclusion. You could advance the slides, Laura, sorry. So just a little bit about us, if you're not familiar with who CPAC is, we are a nonprofit organization that's designated as Connecticut's Parent Training and Information Center, funded under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And we really work not to advocate for families, but to empower them to be effective advocates for their children and to be able to partner with their child's school. And Sean, I'll let you talk about the Bureau of Special Education.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sean Cronin. I work in the State Department of Education, the Bureau of Special Education. I manage the restraint and seclusion for the state, and I also work in the due process unit. So Jen and I have been working on this series. This is the third part of our series, and we are so happy to have Brian here to speak today. So Brian, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself. So thank you so much for being here again today, Brian.
Thank you very much, Sean. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm excited to spend some time with you. As Sean said, my name is Brian McGovern. I am the district behavior analyst for the Stonington Public School District. A little bit of background. My undergrad is in teaching special education, and through that experience, found out that I was a little more interested in behavior and how that works as opposed to curricula and teaching per se, and that led me to get my advanced degree in behavior analysis. And as you'll see as we get started here, I'm excited to share with you a little bit about the lens of behavior analysis, the FBA process, and how we look at behavior through the behavior analytic lens.
Thank you, Ryan. So for today, just a disclaimer, today's session is informational only and not to be considered legal advice. Just a reminder, this session will be recorded and posted on CPAC's YouTube channel. We have a playlist that will have all 3 recordings of the session in English and Spanish available. And this webinar series really aims to provide accurate and objective information related to restraint and seclusion. So it's not a forum to discuss individual cases. But if you do need individual assistance, you can reach out to CPAC at cpac@cpacinc.org or call 860-739-3089 to speak with a trained parent consultant, and we're happy to help you with any individual questions that you might have. We have a lot of content to get through today, so we're gonna get through the content first. If questions come to your mind and you want to type them in the chat, we will try to answer those at the end if we have time. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Brian now. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jen. Okay, the session 3 we titled Supporting Students in the Classroom, Applying FBA Results to Inform Function-Based Preventative Strategies. The next slide includes an outline, as Jen said, an ambitious outline, but I did plan for some time to get to some questions if there are any in the end. First, starting out with a little bit of background, intro to behavior analysis. Just as with individual programming, it's important to know where we've come from, to know where we're going. So I do want to step back a little bit and do some historical approaches towards behavioral intervention and kind of talk about how we have evolved. Next, we'll do the functions of behavior. Third part, heavy emphasis of preventative strategies, although I do include some responsive suggestions here too. The main idea with all cases is prevent, prevent, prevent. Really anything in your life, not just challenging behavior if that's what you're dealing with, right? Best case scenario is for us to anticipate these things, to make changes and to set ourselves up to be in the best possible spot we can be should we be in those circumstances. And then lastly, we do not work alone. We're often on teams, and some ins and outs of best practice for working and supporting teams. So a little bit of background. What is behavior and objective measurement of behavior and data collection? Everything we do is behavior. So I get a little bit of a chuckle when I hear from someone say, this student had a behavior. And I say to myself, well, that's great. That means they're alive, right? Well, what they mean to tell me is that they had a challenging behavior, right? But in a very elementary sense, behavior is everything that we do. And that could be either a desired behavior, things we want to see, like communication, advocating for yourself, certainly academics in a school setting, some life social skills, those sorts of things. And then on the opposite side, we deal with a fair amount of challenging or interfering behavior, and that can vary and that can look differently. I've listed out property destruction, tantrums can look different, talking out, things like this. As we get into this, you'll see though that the principles are the same, whether it's a behavior we want to see or we don't want to see, and we'll get into that. I bring you back a little bit to my master's textbook. There was a saying there, if a dead man can do it, it's not a behavior. So a common example that we see or I see in clinical practice is non-compliance. Can a dead man be non-compliant? Yes. A quick way to get around that, though, is to track actual compliance and not non-compliance. Big staple in our science is trying to be as objective as possible, and through that, using observable and measurable language. And this is sort of how we differ as a discipline from a psychological approach. We're not really dealing with thoughts, feelings, and opinions. It's generally towards observable, measurable behaviors. So where have we been? And you may be surprised to know that we have made a lot of changes. There has been a lot of growth in the field within a recent amount of time. Within the last 40 or 50 years, we've evolved. We're doing great things. Historical approaches used to focus heavily on internal factors. You may have heard someone became aggressive or acted out because they quote unquote saw red. It was thought that if someone had slow or unintelligible speech, that it wasn't a well thought out idea. We find with traditional talk therapy, where a student is able to go to a separate space and reflect on their behavior, it doesn't always translate to the real world setting. So someone in one arena may be able to recognize often what's called expected or unexpected behaviors in a one-to-one setting, but when we put them back into their environment, their behavior is not able to be changed based on just reflecting on those challenges. Historical approaches as well used to focus on two ends of the spectrum. They used to provide heavy rewards for things they wanted to see, or heavy punishers on things they didn't want to see. So things I like, I reward, good for you, give me more of that. If it's something I don't want to see, be it disruptive or dangerous, it was punished, and we could do a whole other training about some really severe practices and different odd things we used to do to try to change behavior. As such, with the two extremes, reward what you want, punish what you don't want, there was no focus on the function or the why. You can think of the function being the why. Why are you doing this behavior? What are you getting out of this behavior? Historical approaches didn't look into that. Nor, if they didn't look into the why, they didn't focus on teaching replacement behaviors. And this very point here is the main takeaway from my talk with you today. Modern practice and behavior replaces problem behavior. We figure out the why, and we teach the student to do another behavior, generally a safer, more desirable behavior that gives them the same end result or the same why. There is a teaching component that goes into this process to replace those that were either disruptive or dangerous. Our approach focuses more on the environment again than what they call internal states of being or within the walls of skin. We are operating under the assumption that we can have more of an effect on changing behavior by changing the environment and how we respond, rather than focusing on self-report or things that may or may not be happening within the walls of the skin. To do that, a staple for us is to take ABC data, and that is the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. The next slide gives you a nice outline of what that could look like. There's a variety of information that we look into to help us look for patterns. That could be times of day, that could be activities, that could be certain staff or peers that are present. Are there common factors here that we can play with to make changes to encourage more safe and desirable behavior? It's a little bit overwhelming, but there is a lot that is happening in someone's environment where behavior occurs. It does not occur in a vacuum. There are a lot of things that are associated. Oftentimes, we can find patterns in behavior and we can make changes. I will talk later, though, that no pattern provides us with information as well. It's all good information for us to have to help make these objective decisions in programming to help move a student forward. So the antecedent, where are they? What are they doing? The behavior, what does it look like? Hopefully, if you can, observable and measurable explanations. Quick example, in the consultation world, I get a call, you got to come out right away. The student is aggressive. Change my schedule around, make it happen, get out there. The student is verbally aggressive. Two very different things from physical and verbal aggression. I probably would not have cleared my schedule to come out for verbal aggression. Though something obviously not desirable, a very different presentation from someone who is physically aggressive. So what does it look like? It's different. I showed you a slide with tantrum earlier. Those will look differently across students. What does it look like? Pretend like if two people are looking at what you have written, they're able to draw a similar perspective or a similar idea or picture of what is happening in this circumstance. And then consequence. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's merely what is happening following the behavior? What are we doing? Are we attending to it? Are we not? At this point in the assessment, we're not ready to say whether anyone's doing the right thing or the wrong thing yet. We're simply gathering information to say, what are we doing? You may have heard that oftentimes things that are closest to us are the hardest to see. It helps to put things down like this on paper, to go back to and look over sessions or over days to see some of these common variables over time. Next slide, thank you. Of that information, that's a whole nother training, but we take that data. Data is a big piece of the science. It helps us to be objective. There are all sorts of biases out there. I'll just highlight one, the tendency to report what is most temporarily immediate. So you have a staff who's working with a student who had zero problem behavior until the last 30 minutes of the day. How will the staff report on that day to you? It was a tough day. But if we look at it objectively, majority of the day, they had zero problem behavior. They're reporting to you what happened most temporarily recent. So we want to be as objective as possible. The next slide I have for you kind of shows us that we can also visually display someone's presentation. We can take our data and the information we've received from prior to beginning treatment, and we visually track that data. If it's something that we don't want to see, a negative or disruptive or dangerous behavior, are the numbers actually coming down? If they are, great. And if not, what are we going to change? How are we going to adjust this to have the numbers moving in a better direction? And this is just a quick line graph for you just to show. So on the bottom of this graph, we have the dates. So there would be data points for each of the date that someone is present. On the left side, or the up and down axis, we have the number, and then each colored line represents a different behavior that we are collecting information on. So in this case, the blue I have as aggression. The orange is what we're calling a flop or a drop, someone dropping their body to the ground. And then the gray would be property destruction. So all the way to the left-hand side, we have our introductory data or our pre-treatment data. That's where we were before we started anything. You have the phase change line of when we put a formal plan into place. You see that it is coming down, which is great. Obviously, I shared a positive example graph with you. We have some phase change lines for vacation as well. And those last sets of data points and another phase change line is returning. You see the numbers are higher, right? We have a little bit of adjustment period, getting back to school, but we look at overall trends of data. We don't look at specific data points. We look at it over time. There is variability. There's things happening, but over time, are we moving in the right direction? Okay. Next, then we'll talk about the functions of behavior. So the categories of why people engage in certain behaviors.
Sorry about that. My cursor was stuck.
No problem. You can advance one more. Thank you. So the two under this will be, what are the functions of behavior? And then secondly, what is a functional behavior assessment? So that's a pretty common term in the field, an FBA, an FBA. We'll talk about what that is and why those are important. Functions of behavior. We are purposeful beings, all of us. And by the way, let me say, this has nothing to do with individuals with differing needs. This is everyone. This is you and I. This is your spouse. This is your pet at home. Okay? This has nothing to do with individuals with special needs. This is all behaving organisms. Let's get that out of the way. We all do things for certain reasons. We do things purposefully to get certain results. What I have found to be helpful with audiences in the past is to say, take out of your brain good versus bad. We're not looking through the lens of good versus bad. We're being objective, and we are trying to just see what variables are included around a particular event. So again, when we say function, it's the why. What are they getting out of the behavior? It describes the purpose or the function of what they're engaging in. Again, whether it's something desirable or something undesirable or unsafe, what is the function of the behavior? If we know the function of the behavior, we are more likely to be successful in treatment because, as I said in the beginning, we are replacing and we are teaching new behaviors. And so we want to make sure that what we're teaching matches what they're getting out of their previous potentially problematic behavior. Okay. Here are the four mighty functions. So we have attention. If social media has reminded us of anything, it is that can look in a positive form or a negative form. But the main idea here is that attention is attention. So that could also include scolding or reprimands, facial expressions. Tangibles. A lot of young learners do things to get something as a result. They want to have or hold something. Stickers, toys, cars, blocks. A common function in a school setting is escape. We do have the expectation of work and to complete tasks often. An escape function is a very common function. I don't want to do what you're asking me to do, or I want to delay what is being asked of me. The fourth and final one is separate because it has less of an effect. The environment has less of an effect. We call it automatic or self-stimulatory behaviors, be it the actual act of the behavior itself is reinforcing. So when we say automatic, it's not in the sense of it can't be controlled, it's happening and you can't stop it. It just means that the act of the behavior, really the learner controls their own reinforcement. And on the next couple of slides, I give you some examples. Attention is pretty straightforward, right? Very common. You arrive late, people are looking, often in classrooms. It's noise-making behaviors, calling out, banging on desks, making certain noises. You're getting the audience to provide you with the feedback you're looking for. Escape, you scream and cry, you get the responses to be taken away from the morning circle. You're a little bit older now, you curse the teacher, you're removed from the setting, you tip over a desk, same response. For the other two, tangible, you threaten a peer, they hand over something preferred. You throw a tantrum in a store, the parent buys your compliance by giving in and giving you the item you actually were looking for. Under the automatic category, I like the example of scratching an insect bite. Just the act of scratching that bite provides me with relief of the pain or some sort of input that I don't care who's looking. I'm not trying to get out of anything. It doesn't matter where I am. I'm doing it because the act of engaging in the behavior provides me with that input. You will, in some cases, have you will be working with students where you know the function. Sometimes students will communicate the function. They'll tell you, I don't want to do this. I hate you. I don't want to be in this class. Sounds like an escape function. Or dealing with audiences of students and your class clowns and this, using it for attention. In some cases, it will be clear to you what the function of the behavior is, and you can sort of provide appropriate treatment and responses based on that. In others, you would need to go to an FBA or a functional behavior assessment. It's not clear what the function is, or more commonly, there are multiple functions to an individual behavior. In some cases, I do the same behavior for escape, and in other cases, I do the same behavior for attention. And so an FBA would help you to tease out what those variables are and to effectively create a plan based on those assessment results. So an FBA, the biggest piece of an FBA is observation. If I go into your setting and I observe exactly what's happening in a particular setting, there's no better information than that, right? Think of other forms of therapy, maybe marriage and counseling therapy. You get in your vehicle, or I guess everyone's online now, either way, and you reflect on your own behavior in your setting. In the previous example, I'm watching you in your setting, in your classroom. I see what the variables are. I see how people are responding. The observation piece is a huge piece of that. We also use ABC data to help us document those sorts of variables and consistencies across days. It can be labor intensive for staff to have to write out some of those variables, but it's the biggest piece of the assessment. It is complemented, though, with interviews. There are checklists and rating scales of people to say, this is when I see the behavior happening, and this is what it looks like for me, and this is the way I respond to it. The biggest piece, though, I tell teams of any team I'm on is the data portion. The best thing I can provide for you is a way to objectively record what is happening in this scenario. I can't tell you whether an intervention will work or not. In fact, I'm not always the one who's carrying it out. This is carried out by teams of people, but I can give you objective presentation of where we started and then tracking the treatment and making informed decisions moving forward. Moving into preventative and reinforcement strategies, responsive, excuse me. I do want to highlight here some of the principles that are involved in programming. We have reinforcement, and without getting technical, reinforcement is when our responses to behavior are either letting that behavior continue or the behavior is increasing. So I want you to think of anything either in your personal or professional life that is either continuing at the same level or it is increasing, meaning it's happening more frequently. If that is the case, reinforcement is happening. Okay, and this is back to sort of, as I said in the beginning, we're not saying whether it's a good or a bad behavior. It's simply, is it continuing or is it increasing? If that's the case, reinforcement is happening. And so we need to go back to the drawing board and say, what is reinforcing in this particular scenario? Punishment would be the opposite. It is decreasing. Our responses to what a student is engaging in is having that behavior decrease. And then extinction. Extinction is when we do make changes, the individual may show some different presentations based on us making changes. So you can imagine if you have been previously responding to a student who raises their hand frequently or calls out frequently, and you decide, I think that student is doing that to get my attention. They're acting out for my attention. So tomorrow, I'm going to try to redirect and not respond to their noise-making behaviors. We can predict pretty reliably that that student is going to have an adjustment period, if you will. They're going to engage in some new behaviors. They're going to engage in the same behaviors at a higher rate, trying to get you back to your old ways. Call it testing, call it relearning. It is a piece you'll want to talk about in the beginning as a team. When you start to make changes, or a family team, you will see variability as you make changes, and oftentimes that's a good sign. Hey, as I said, we've done the FBA now. We know what the variables are. We know what the function is now. So we're able to put things in place to teach those alternatives to get ahead of it. As I said in the beginning, best practice with all of this is get ahead of it, get ahead of it, get ahead of it. How do we back things up? How do we set them up in a better place? We're not waiting for behavior to happen and whack-a-moling it. It's what do they need? How do we teach them these replacement behaviors to get to the same result? If you want out, I know it's for escape. You don't want to do this. Rather than engage in behavior, I'm going to teach you to do this. And that could look a lot of ways. Maybe it's a card you bring up and put on the teacher's desk. Maybe you just simply ask. Maybe you turn your materials over. Some sort of cue that you have come up, you formulated with your staff of, this is my signal. This is the new behavior. And guess what? Anytime you do that, we let you out. So you're getting the same result minus any problem behavior. Obviously, interventions that are built off of knowing what the function are going to be able to change the behavior faster and more durable because we're matching what the function is. We know exactly why you're doing this, and we are giving you the same result, okay, just without the problem behavior. If we're not looking at these factors, if we're just using what I call general good behavioral strategies, which are fine for the majority of students, but in these cases, we're operating under the assumption that this hasn't been working for our student at this point, right? We can inadvertently be doing some of the wrong behavioral practices. So I give you a couple of examples. Timeout for an escape function, right? If I engage in a behavior and you send me away, if that was the whole purpose of my doing the behavior, you fed into the behavior, right? That's the wrong response for an escape function. For reprimands, and this is why I say take good versus bad out of it. A lot of times people will say, I'm punishing this behavior, right? I'm telling you, no, you can't do this. This is unsafe. This is this and that. But again, from what we know with reinforcement, if you're having to continue to do that, you may actually be reinforcing the behavior when you think you're punishing it. We don't get to call it reinforcement or punishment until we see what happens over time. So a lot of times I'll hear, I reinforced that. I'm reinforcing it and it's not working. That's because it's not reinforcement. What you're using is not working. It's not changing the behavior. We need to go back to the drawing board. I draw it back a little bit to your general behavior strategies, best case scenarios, right? A lot of students work for praise. And that's best case scenario because when we think of students graduating from school and being out in the real world and more natural contingencies, praise is the most common, right? Nobody's standing there giving you anything, not points, not stickers. It's, hey, nice job, good for you. What's on to the next one? The reality of that is that a lot of the students are not motivated by praise. They do need some of those backup things. Yes, we are working them towards praise. That's why we pair it with praise, any delivery of any kind of object or activity. The goal is to work to that, but if we're not seeing them responding to praise at this point, we need to beef it up with something else. Your classroom reward systems, be it your level systems of moving your card or tickets or representative things of good behavior. And then, of course, your school-based systems. Again, at this point, we're saying these are not effective for your particular learner if you're continuing to see levels of challenging behavior. It's time for us to go to something else.
Brian, sorry, you cut out, your volume cut out for a second. If you want to start saying that slide again.
Yes, thank you. We know that reinforcement is effective. We know that it is like the law of gravity, right? It shows consistent effect, again, across organisms, across things. But there are certain things that we can do to make reinforcement even more effective. The largest one is the first one, your timing. Timing is the most important component in your delivery, in your attempts to change behavior. Timing is more effective than the item or activity that you're actually delivering. Think about that. The timing of your delivery of the reward will shape and change the behavior faster than the actual item or activity you're delivering. Okay, so research tells us like 2 to 3 seconds, immediate pairing of what behavior equals what consequence. I already mentioned praise. Praise is easy. You don't have to carry it around, but it can quickly fall flat. Good job. Good for you. You're having a good day. The way I get around it is to be descriptive. You pair the behavior with the praise. Look at you. You arrived on time. You got started right away. You're the first one here. Tell them exactly what you like about the behavior. Don't just assume that they know. There's a good meme out there that says, never tell your teacher what you like because they'll make you work for it. And that is exactly what we do. If you don't have the like, if you don't have the hook per se of what they're interested in, we're not going to see behavior change at the same level that we would if we did know. So we need to spend some time knowing what the students are motivated by. Lastly, I put age and function. A lot of my older per se students are not motivated by tangibles and things where my younger students are. So you have to match the function with the reward. A lot of your older students want out. They don't want anything. They want to not do anything. How can you play with escape as the reward? We'll talk about that. Next slides, I give you some examples of group contingencies. You may have situations where the students don't care about your attention, but they are motivated by that of their peers. If some of these group contingencies are done correctly, you can see the behavior change more effectively. So there are 3. In the first one, independent, you are saying anyone who makes an A or higher on this test gets the pizza party on Friday. So anybody that meets that individual criteria has access to that reward. The second, in a dependent, the pizza party is dependent on a single student or a group of students getting that A for the entire class. So it is an individual student or group of students. They are the ones that need to achieve your criteria, in this case, the A for the pizza party for everybody. Lastly, then, the interdependent. Every single person in that class needs to make the A for everyone to get the pizza party. The next slide, I show you the pros and cons. Independent being there's not going to be a lot of collaboration because I want my pizza. I don't really care if anybody else gets it because if I reach the A, I get the pizza anyway. Dependent and interdependent can build a little bit of camaraderie and motivation per se if it is known who the groups that are required to get the pizza party. Challenges to that are there you could have some bullying, you could have some negative side effects if we're not meeting the criteria. I would just add to this that when we do set the expectation, we set achievable expectations. So we know that the students can reach the highest level or our expectation. We are setting them up for success. It's not so high that we would be seeing them miss the expectation, if that makes sense. The next set of slides then get into treatment planning. Okay, now we know what the functions are and how to best wrap around services. And by wrap around, I mean on the preventative side, these are things that are in place before the behavior even occurs. These are options that are available to you. We're teaching you the alternatives. We're setting you up for success. And then you can think of the responsive as the consequences. What's the best way to respond, even if the behavior does occur? So the first category is attention. First of all, make sure that we're doing everything we can for attention to be readily available outside of challenging behavior. If the paradigm shifts to where I'm only getting attention for doing challenging behavior and people are so exhausted from dealing with me when I'm not doing challenging behavior, I learn that challenging behavior is the way to go. And by the way, if it is maintained by attention, they can get our attention 100% of the time by engaging in challenging behavior. I know that sounds odd, but it's not positive attention, right? You can think of a circumstance where maybe I had to clear the classroom. Maybe some other adults are coming in and maybe they are more prominent figures in this building. And now all eyes are on me. And even though people are saying corrective or reprimand statements to me, it's still all eyes on me. It's less about what is actually being said and more about numbers of eyes and people that are around. Preventatively then as well, your replacement behavior. What are you teaching the student as the more appropriate alternative to get attention versus engaging in their challenging behavior? Obviously, anytime they're using your alternative, you are pouring on the attention very, very heavily. Sorry. On the responsive side, when we are seeing challenging behavior, you're doing your best to do planned ignoring. I know some people don't like that term because ignore sounds like you're ignoring the student. A better term you could use is withhold attention. So I'm still aware of you as the individual, but I'm not engaging in that behavior. And then you can also consider neutral redirections, neutral cues, which would be like, hey, remember, Joe, we're using our new behavior, limited attention as a redirect cue back to the task. I often hear that, there are certain behaviors I can't ignore. Okay. And I understand that. My comment to staff in that case is, well, then treat it like your words are $100 bills. Less is more. Attend to it. Come here. Sit with me. Let's get started. Versus, why do you always do that? You know you can't do that. We reviewed the rules, blah, blah, blah. You can all imagine. Okay, next. Tangible. So I'm doing the behavior to get access to specific items or activities. So first, consider what we can do to enrich the environment and provide you with more opportunities to get those. Second, we're teaching those alternatives. The new behavior is communication. It is through your words or your pictures or your assistive tech devices. Whatever your means of communication is, that is how you get your needs met, not through challenging behavior. So we redirect you to, hey, just communicate, use your device, use your words. That is how you tell me what you need and how you get what you want. You will often see this presented in a first then contingency. It's grandma's rule, right? First you eat your vegetables, then you get dessert. One quick correction I would say with this is sometimes I see people slip into making this a schedule. First math, then gym. It's not a schedule. It's what are you offering as the reward for completion of your if your first expectation. Obviously, we're not providing that reward when we see challenging behavior. And again, doing our best to provide opportunities for them to engage with that behavior, maybe on, with that item, on a more frequent schedule. Okay. Escape. As I said, escape is the most common function in an educational setting. I often sit in meetings of families telling me this doesn't occur at home. And I remind them that it's the same for us. A work setting and a home setting, our behavior looks very, very different. Trust me, mine looks very different. The expectations are just different. You're having to do tasks. You're having to interact with people that you may not normally interact with in particular ways. And that looks like your verbal language and your physical behavior. The expectations are just very, very different. The biggest intervention for an escape function is choice. Okay, I could scream that from a mountaintop. It's probably one of the top 5 things that I advise in consultation. We have to be flexible. Even within a particular task, there are a lot of choice things that you can offer to a student that adds buy-in and makes them feel like they're an active participant in their day. Do you want to start on the front or the back? Do you want to work with me or Mr. Jones? Do you want to write with a pen or a pencil? Do you want to take a walk first and get some water? Or are you ready to get started? Altering the choice of activity first, then language, having that hook, having that reinforcement, using the escape as a reward. If you sit through the lesson and you finish first, you can go sit out in the hallway. There's no expectation for you to have to, especially if you're on grade level or above, there's no need for me to make you have to do exactly what everybody else is doing. Providing reinforcement for task completion, and then of course, doing your best to not allow them to escape should problem behavior occur. On the responsive side, if it does, trying to have them come back to some sort of semblance of the task. An alternate, and I can't remember if I put this in the slides or not, but either way, you're getting it. Oh, I did. It's the bottom one. Scaffold rewards. In an if-then statement, we're saying, do this, and then I'll give you this. The problem with that is if they don't complete it, they get nothing. In a scaffold, you can think of it like stairs or bleachers. In a work task, your top stair would be complete the whole task. Your middle stair would be do half of it. Your bottom stair would do 5. And then you level the reward based on their output. So this could look differently. You know, their top tier favorite thing is the iPad. You'd put that on your top step. Your middle step is maybe playing a game with a peer, and your bottom step is drawing or reading, right? So you've leveled the rewards. You're basically saying, I'll meet you where you meet me. Your output is commensurate to what I'm willing to provide to you. It helps to counter for the all or nothing, which often can provide emotional responses from students who do not earn. You also can do it within the same activity. So it's all iPad, it's just number of minutes. Bottom tier, I'm offering you 2 minutes. Middle tier, I'm offering you 5. And if you complete the whole thing, I'm giving you 10. So it can look a couple of different ways. Lastly then, and the most challenging one, behavior maintained by self-stimulation or automatic. As I said, the first 3 are a direct result of the environment. In this last category, the automatic, they control their own reinforcement. So that can be very challenging to navigate. So first, what can we do to make the environment more stimulating? We often try to replace it if it is something especially that is very stigmatizing. So you're jumping up and down and flapping your arms and really kind of sticking out. How can we provide you with that same input by doing something else? So I currently have a student who engages in some self-injury towards his face and chin. We are trying to redirect the hands. We are trying to provide input to the mouth and face by offering non-contingent free access to gum and breaks and things. How can we compete with what he is receiving by engaging in that behavior? And of course, practicing other strategies of deep breathing and cueing and things. But how can we compete with what he's receiving as a result of engaging in that behavior? On the responsive side, I just put, withholding attention, even if it's not an attention component, and this really should be across all of them, we don't want to provide a lot of attention for it because we don't want it to become attention seeking as well, right? So now I do it because I enjoy it, but now I also get a good audience and a good reaction for it. So we want to be careful of that. Okay. Some things to keep in mind when we are teaching these new skills, these replacement skills. So again, this is where you're saying, hey, Joe, I know you're engaging in this behavior to get out of my class. I'm going to teach you to do something else. There are considerations when we're teaching these. First of all, it has to meet the same function. So in the case of Joe who wants out, if I just walk over to him and I say, hey, Joe, I can help you. Here, let me sit with you. That's attention, not escape, right? I'm using the wrong approach. Joe wants out, not for someone to sit and cue him more often on how to do the work. So that's the wrong approach. The second one there, it has to be as efficient. It has to work quickly. Again, in the Joe example of wanting out of work, it's very common for me to hear staff say, hey, when Joe uses his replacement, right? Joe says, hey, I want out. And then staff will say, Joe, thank you for telling me. Finish up your last one on that page and then you can go. It seems like an innocent thing to do, but that's in violation of our second one here. It's not efficient and it's not as easy, right? Joe can immediately run out of this room. Having him complete even one more problem is not as efficient, right? So when we're replacing it, it's got to be as easy. It would be like someone teaching you a new route to get to work, to drive to work. And if you start to take the new route and it's even just as long as your old route was, you're going to go back to your old ways. Okay. 3, must be as effective, reliably and consistent. Must fit their strengths and abilities. So matching what their skill set is. And lastly, it's got to be generalizable. Everybody that works with them has to do it. If it only works in one setting with one person, we're not going to see the effect across everybody. We're not going to see the behavior change. Okay, I already mentioned generally, and things can be multiply maintained. Generally, we want to be as limited with attention as possible, and I have a diagram for you with that. We talked about timeout, and we talked about good versus bad. So here's the diagram I made, and this is to try to help staff understand how I want them to respond. When we are seeing challenging behavior, I want you to be neutral. There's no don't, stop, quit, relax, put that down. We don't. I wish you would stop banging. It's neutral. Yes, you can do some redirection of cueing the behavior you would like to see, but in general, your verbal behavior is neutral as well as your body. Confident, flat, unbothered by what is happening in the circumstance. When we start to see positive behavior on the lower level there, they've just turned it around, right? They had a challenge. Now they're sort of getting back on track. We're turning reinforcement and praise back on. Good for you. Even though we don't love everything that they're doing, right? They still might be mumbling or swearing. And then as that increases, obviously the praise and whatever we're using as rewards is commensurate to the output that they're giving us. Lastly, then, oh, okay, so this is just an example. Desired behavior, you give a task, the student begins working on the top. The consequence is praise is delivered. In the same example, a task is delivered, the student pushes it away. That's our example of challenging behavior. Staff withhold attention. Okay, there's not getting into the back and forth and so on. Last section then, working with others. Another main part of my position is working people and teams out of power struggles. Even well-intentioned staff, it happens to me. It doesn't necessarily mean you intended to get into a power struggle. It happens. As I say with a lot of things, the first thing, though, is recognizing, ding, 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 this student is trying to get me into a power struggle. Red light, stop, put the brakes on. How are we going to manage this situation rather than get into a back and forth with a student? I have heard power struggles be represented as a tug of war. And if you even pick up the rope, you have already lost. Meaning basically you're showing the student that you will engage, right? If you even bend down to grab the rope, you are showing the student that you will go there, quote unquote, and engage in the back and forth. So okay, it can look a lot of different ways. You're having an emotional response as a staff or a caretaker, inappropriate or excessive consequences. You keep going, you're gonna get ISS tomorrow. Okay, you got ISS for Friday too. Keep going until we have ISS for the rest of the year and we've sort of dug this hole, right? The next slide then has some better examples of how to manage that. Again, even well-intentioned staff, students will try to get you into power struggles. You do have a lot of say over what happens in their day and things, right? No wonder they are trying to come back to claw back some of that control. Give time, switch staff, provide choices. What is the overall goal of what you need to be completed? Is there another way that we can get this done without it looking exactly like everyone else's? Prioritize, pick your battles, switch staff. Another important part here is to use your resources, switch staff, take care of yourself, right? Take care of yourself so that you are in a better spot to be able to take care of others. Be creative, think outside the box. Again, what is the goal of what you need this student to represent and to show you? Are there other ways that we could do this, or this could be broken down? A lot of this comes from inflexibility, and we really need to be flexible. I hear a lot, they're not doing it like everybody else. No, they're not. And you could keep your expectation in the same and stay frustrated, or we could kind of mix it up, capitalize on their strengths and get more done than nothing, right? Okay. Supporting all the students. So building rapport, of course, right? Relationships. What do they like? What are they interested in? Conversations need to happen around differences and perceived fairness. This often comes up with some students in class earning breaks or rewards where others are not. Even at the elementary age, it's a good time to start having these discussions of different people have different needs now and later in life, and that's okay. The third one, mind your own behavior. I hear a lot that my staff are able to withhold attention from certain behaviors, but the audience, the other students are not. The MYOB game is a great alternative to help you compete with the attention that your challenging student is receiving. It is an isolated, only available reward for when my challenging student is displaying behaviors. So the teacher would have a cue, a signal, a word to let the rest of the class know that this new reward is available. And if you mind your own behavior, stay in your seat, do your work, meet the expectations, that reward is available to you. You are incentivizing compliance and minding my own behavior versus attending to the peer to compete with that. Lastly, then, you can also pair rewards or breaks with the entire class. So let's say I have a student who earns a couple of times a day, maybe once or twice a week, the whole class goes outside with the student or gets to play a game or engage in some type of preferred activity paired with my individual students' programming. That will help incentivize the whole class to encourage your student to earn their rewards too, because they know eventually one is coming for them. And intermittent is the best. The unpredictability will keep them responding. Sorry, I'm going a little bit tight here, but we only have a couple of slides left. You will see that rapport building with staff is the same as with students. You have to build rapport with the staff. What are their likes? What are their interests? The principals work with the staff, meaning reinforcement, providing praise, recognizing the positive things that they're doing, the steps that they're taking, switching out, being supportive. You want to have a team approach from the time that a plan is beginning to be developed. You want everybody, all the players at the table from the start, so that we're all on the same page, and it makes it more difficult to go back and say someone doesn't agree or wasn't at the table or had the wrong trajectory of the things that we're targeting. We do feedback surveys with our staff. I tell them, you're not robots. You have different personalities. Even if you're following a plan as directly as written, there are different types and styles of students and approaches. The feedback survey basically says, how do you like to receive feedback? A lot of the staff responded on those. They like it immediate. They like it without an audience, of course, and they like to have it followed up in writing so that they can refer to it later. Those conversations are had before we even begin to set the tone of, hey, there's gonna be feedback. So you don't have the awkward, hey, come over here, I need to chat. It's already embedded. There are going to have to be changes. Feedback is a natural part of this process. Who is a behavior intervention plan really written for? Is it written for the students? Or is it written for the staff? Ultimately, it's for the student, but whose behavior is it really targeting? The staff, right? We really want the staff to have certain things in place and respond in a certain way, right? So we have to have really good formal training on what that looks like and why those things are so important to be happening to set the student up for success. And a big piece of that is accessible language. Setting up this training, I hope I didn't use too much of it. It's difficult in a technical science, but don't give them a document that has all these big words and long explanations. It's got to be things that they understand and are able to do. We need to give them examples. And we need to do the third one. We need to be modeling what the plan should look like. It's one thing to read it. It's another to see somebody else do it, right? We all have YouTube now. What would you rather do? Read the instructions on how to put a piece of furniture together or pull up a video and watch someone do it, right? Unmatched. We need to be doing that. And then I think lastly here, I put consistency or nothing. It's very, very important that everyone consistently responds and provides the interventions and things that we're putting into place in the same way. We want a predictable environment and a predictable response for these learners as we're dealing with some potentially challenging behavior. Okay, lastly, the citations, and then my big thank you to both Sean and Jennifer. I really appreciate the invite. I hope that this was helpful. I don't know if we have a chance to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Brian. That was really very informative. I even learned a lot and I knew a lot of this stuff. So thank you for sharing it. You explained it very well. We do have some questions if you're okay taking some questions.
Absolutely.
And we will be emailing a copy of the slides to everybody who is on today. So we'll send a PDF version out to you. So you'll have this. And some of them were a little specific, so I'll try to say them generally, but the most recent one I saw, I kind of wanted us to answer first. Because someone asked, so how an FBA is addressing seclusion and restraining, what will be the role of safety plans for high, strong, and disruptive behaviors? And so there is a reason that we added this as part of the series, but Brian, I'll give you a first shot at answering how this can help with restraint and seclusion.
So when you're talking about restraint and seclusion, those are responses to challenging behavior. And so when we look at the ABC, that would fall under the C category. You are responding by either having to restrain or seclude someone for their safety. The FBA is showing you the why. Why are they doing this? That's the behavior. That's the middle section. And then we're backing it up to the A. So based on the behavior and the why, we go back to the A, to the preventative strategies, to the start. What do we need to teach them that gives them the same result of this behavior? And the rationale is that if we teach them to do a safer behavior, then to do these behaviors that are needing restraint and seclusion, we should be replacing that. If you're giving them the same result that they're getting out of it, you should see that go away and remove the need for you to have the safety issues resulting in restraint or seclusion.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything to that, Sean?
I think Brian summed it up perfectly. I don't think I could add anything better than what he just said.
Thank you. How to handle a child who is violent but overreacts to holds due to PTSD, has many triggers to misbehavior, but also is mostly seeking to escape from demands.
Yeah, so there's a lot there. Triggers, if there are ones you can completely take away for now, that's advisable, especially if you're dealing with physical safety and restraint type procedures. It doesn't mean they permanently go away, but I call it triaging. If you have that many and you really need to kind of get down to a safer spot, you need to do what you need to do. If you think the function is escape, we would be teaching alternate behaviors to get that escape. What I would say is that often they're multiply maintained though. So it sounds like you may have both an escape and an attention component, meaning most people don't just want to escape to just sit there. They want to escape to something else. So I would look at that. What are they escaping to? Is it your response of physicalness? This sounds crazy, but we have people who learn to do behaviors because know that your response is going to be of a physical nature. And while that seems crazy to some of us, that is out there, whether they stand in the position of the hold, or they lay on the ground, or they walk into the seclusion room. That should be cueing you of maybe something in our response here is feeding into this behavior. Those are very, very difficult circumstances to get out of, right? Where someone knows to engage in a behavior to get a physical response from you, because what happens when you get your team together and you say, hey, I think they are looking for us to go hands-on, and let's stop going hands-on and let's see what happens. What's going to happen, right? If you're already in a safety issue and trying not to, they're going to ramp it up. Hey, where are you? Yesterday, you guys came over, we struggled, you put me in the room, whatever it is, and now you're stuck because there is a legit safety issue. And you feel like, we don't want to feed into that by going in, but we have to. You are doing such dangerous behavior. We have to for your safety. So you're stuck in this loop. You have to go back. You have to go back. Consider other things. Are you going to use mats, blocking? How can you provide? Is it just your attention? Is it the physicalness of your attention? There are different variables that are happening in that scenario. What is it? And how can you get ahead of it? How can you provide those things maybe non-contingently so they feel like they don't have to engage in problem behavior to get it? That's a very, very challenging scenario.
Thank you. I wonder about the why behind the function once it is established. For example, if an FBA determines that a child's aggression is a result of the escape function, then why is the child trying to escape? Is there an assessment to address this? And is this where neuroscience can help do a deeper dive and inform a behavior intervention plan?
Short of neuro psych, I can't speak to that, but in your ABC data, you can continue that and look and see, is it, we often see patterns with pencil paper tasks now. Is it something like that? Can you alter what the task is? Is it a particular subject area? So just continuing to take that antecedent data to look for patterns, whether within tasks, time of day, those sorts of things. If it's across things and across modes and types of tasks, you'd have to do a little deeper diving into the why, yes.
Thank you. And what happens when the reward is not reachable by the child, and then what? He won't care because he is not getting anything anyway. So why should he try, right?
When we are not seeing responding change based on that, you look at two things. Number one, your expectation, and number two, what you're offering as the reward. Number one, is the expectation too high? You need to come down. By the way, initial expectations should be set right where you know they can meet it or below. And then the reward, I would argue that what you're using is not serving as a reinforcer. And we know that because it's not changing the behavior. You got to go back to the drawing board and see what you have, what you can offer, what you're willing to offer to incentivize. And then consider that scaffolding thing too, right? So it's not an all or nothing. It's you do a smaller amount, you get a lesser reward, medium, halfway, you get a middle. And if you complete, and by the way, in that scaffolding, the highest that you set is achievable. If that makes sense. Okay.
Thank you. And that's all the questions that I see from the chat. I'll so Brian or Sean, do you want to add anything else to kind of sum up from today?
I'll just add a little bit of you know, we try to get you to think as objectively at a situation as possible. Just what are the variables that are happening here? Again, take good versus bad out of it. You know, even in an example of challenging behavior, we're having to restrain. This is dangerous. This is, yes, but try to objectively look at what is happening in this circumstance. As I said, when you're in it every day, it's very difficult to step out of and say, and to look objectively and see what's happening in a particular situation. The ABC data can help for that, or even having another professional come in and take ABC for you, that just that fresh outside look at what is occurring in a circumstance can really help us to be as objective as possible. And then lastly, preventative. I have students that complete no work for me because it's an escape function and they were huge safety issues. We've backed it all the way up to just stay safe in school. Your expectation is to stay safe in school. Concerns with meeting their academic needs. Their academic needs right now are behavioral. That is a prereq before we can start to move forward. And that is another conversation that's challenging to have with educators. They wear a different hat, they have a different focus and a lot of pressure on academics. But someone who is engaging in those levels of challenging behavior are not ready to be sitting, attending, working on a task, right? We have huge safety issues that we need to get to first. I'm not saying to always do that. I'm just saying that at some point, the behavioral needs are the priority. Work on prevention, back it up. I always say to teams, back up. How are we going to get ahead of it? Tomorrow, what are we going to do? Back it up, back it up. What do we need to be teaching them to give them that same result that we know that they're looking for out of that FBA?
Thank you, Brian. Sean, did you have any final words of wisdom as we end the series?
I just thought this was so informative. I mean, it really was a nice way to kind of conclude our series. So, Brian, thank you so much for everything that you
Thank you for
offered us
having me.
today.
I appreciate it.
I mean, this was really wonderful way to conclude our series, John. So I just really am so appreciative for you being able to be here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and part of the series, we really wanted to have different perspectives coming and sharing with the audience. So it was really important to have somebody from a district. So thank you for sharing your perspective. And again, it all comes back to the student. And we talked in the first session about under the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, that one of the things PPTs need to look for students and consider is if their behavior impedes their learning or the learning of others. And as a PPT, that's a planning and placement team. That's our job to look at those behaviors, not just to expect them to get through it. We, to have actually to go through something like a functional behavioral assessment and make decisions that are based on data. But thank you so much for everything, everybody. We will be sending everything out to you. And thank you for joining us for the series.
Thank you.